don't need to grip the wheel of life so damn tight all the time. You can sort of let go. And so the question is then, how do I deal with this incredible life that I have before me? How do I live the most fully possible?
It's so cool because I get to meet people like you. Oh my gosh, how lucky am I? And have these rich conversations, and then we all heal. We all heal together.
I think a successful life is to give love and receive love. In the past, I was anxious and now I am free.
Do you ever wonder, is it just me? Well, it's not just you. Welcome to Fear Unzipped. I'm Sandi Serling. This is where we talk about self-doubt, grief, the things that keep us stuck, and connection. You'll hear from scientists and intuitives, and together we loosen fear's grip and move toward purpose. This is Fear Unzipped. Let's jump right in. Dr. Amy Robbins, welcome to Fear Unzipped. I am delighted to have you here because my podcast is about neuroscience meeting metaphysics, and I can't think of a better guest than you. And we have a mutual friend, Suzanne Giesman, who we love dearly,
Love
and
her.
Beth Grossman, who love dearly.
My favorite part about Beth is the on the bottom of her signature block, it says like Beth Grossman makes, I think, I don't want to swear, but
A big difference in life.
makes a big difference in life. Makes stuff happen. She makes stuff happen,
Yeah,
and she
she's
certainly does. She's incredible.
she's just like a rock star to me. She knows that. I want to do a little introduction so people know who you are. And you're a clinical psychologist in private practice for almost 20 years. You're the director of mental health of Beyond, a holistic wellness club in Chicago. This is what I love about you. I'm sure there's so many things I'm going to fall in love with you, but
Oh, thank you.
you combine traditional and energy psychotherapy and spiritual tradition in intuition. Your podcast, Life, Death, and the Space Between, is where you explore the complex synergy between the psychological and spiritual, which, of course, I'm all in. I'm all in on that. And this I love. You created a course called Spiritually Informed Therapy for Mental Health Clinicians. Amy, I had somebody send me a message through Messenger, and she said, I'm a clinical psychologist, but I'm really, really diving into intuition and metaphysics. I want to combine that. And I said, oh my gosh, if you can do those two together, I think you're golden. I think you are just the best therapist that way. Here's a quote from you that I find fascinating because I've never thought of it this way. All trauma is spiritual trauma. It severs the impulse to reach for wonder, connection, and meaning, the very essence of our soul. Because when you're in
Mm-mm.
trauma, you can't find the wonder of it all.
Mm-mm.
So now, Amy, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to toss it to you, and I would love for you to share with the listeners and viewers how you even got into this and what kind of when you were younger, what was going on in your life.
Thank you, Sandy. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. I always love just talking to new people and new audiences and seeing who it resonates with because I feel so passionately that like this is where we have to head. Like we have to move into this direction. Otherwise, we're going to continue doing exactly what we've been doing, which I don't think is working very well. So where this started for me, interestingly, is I'm not one of those people who was young and intuitive. I mean, I think I had I would say more empathic sense for sure.
Mhm.
And I come from, my mom is extremely empathic. And I would say that she reads people very well and my grandmother, but I wouldn't say they would ever say that they were intuitive in any way. I think they had good sense of intuition, but they wouldn't call themselves intuitive in the way that I think we think of intuitives now, like people who can connect with loved ones who've passed on the other side, things like that. So, but where this really started for me was when I was 18 years old, I lost my aunt. She had juvenile onset diabetes and she was waiting. She was 40. I always forget, like 47, around the age I am now, 47, 48. I just turned 49 this last week. So, I have now surpassed her in age, which is, pretty profound because I think when you lose someone that's close to you, and she was like a second mother to me in many ways, and you pass the age that you were, like that they were, the perspective of what was in front of them is just like I can't even imagine now leaving. Like, I have so much to do
I
still,
know,
and I
I
have my
know.
kids, and it's just so profound to think of, like, her life ending so abruptly and shortly. So she was waiting for a kidney and pancreas transplant, and while she was waiting for the transplant, they had gone in and realized that her heart would not have been strong enough to withstand a transplant, and so they went in to do surgery on her heart to try to repair her heart, excuse me, and her heart was too weak, and they couldn't get her heart back, and so she died on the table, and I come from a family of physicians. My grandfather, her father, was a pediatrician. My uncle was an orthopedic surgeon. So, really, there was a lot of medical people involved in this. So, the fact that she kind of died in this way in a hospital, like, really abruptly was very
Mm,
traumatic, and I was a freshman in college at the time. Also crazy because now my daughter is the age that I was, and she is at the college that I was at, like, so there's, like, reliving of all these experiences, and I remember when I got that dreaded phone call that so many people sadly know, where you think you're gonna get one call and you get
mhm,
another, and this was that call. It was like, "Aunt Linda didn't make it, you need to come home," and I came home for a very short period of time. We're Jewish, so we had a shiva. I went right back to school and kinda got back to my life. But I was really, really profoundly shaken by her death, and I didn't really realize at the time that I was grieving. I mean,
yeah,
people weren't talking about life and grief in the way that they are now. It feels like it's everywhere now. But there's much more invitation for that. And so I kinda went back to my life and had a ton of anxiety. I was anxious before, but I had a lot of anxiety that followed her death because I was so afraid of what could potentially happen to me now.
mm,
And I had made a lot of associations between her life and my life and what was gonna happen, and fast forward, I'll make this a little bit quicker, fast forward to graduate school. So I had finished college, I had gotten a job that I hated, I was miserable. A lot of this was connected to, like, my belief around she went through a lot of stress after she went through a really, really bad divorce. There was a lot of stress that followed. She had
mm,
to go back to work in kind of conditions that weren't ideal for her health, and also now we know, right? Like, when you're in a health crisis and you have stress, cortisol levels rise, and all of these things that contribute to your stress, I now recognize probably contribute to your illness. I now recognize were probably really part of what led to her untimely and early death. I mean, she was sick before, but then the stress of a divorce and needing to go back to work in conditions that weren't great for her physical limitations because of the diabetes, and one thing kind of led to another. So I took a job. I was very, very unhappy. I quit. I waited tables and I decided I need to figure out what I'm going to do because the job that I originally had was not it. And I started volunteering at what was Children's Memorial Hospital in their partial hospitalization program for kids who were in between an inpatient and an outpatient, therapy. And I fell in love with the work.
mm,
And I decided I would go back to graduate school. And my second year of graduate school, as my cousin, her son, was getting ready to get married, I had my first visit from my aunt. Actually, my second visit. I had had a visit before, but I didn't know it was a visit. And so it gets a little confusing. It was like
mm,
everything, and I can remember both of them so clearly. So in the visit that I'm going to describe, that is my second visit, what was real that I call my first
mhm,
visit, but that was actually my second visit. My aunt came to me and she shared with me it was an image in my mind's eye, and very clearly, she and I were at the kitchen in the house that I grew up in, and my mom was standing at the kitchen sink, and my mom was looking out the window, and she said to me my aunt said to me, "Tell your mom, don't be upset. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be at the wedding." And then I saw an image of my uncle and
mm,
the same thing, she said, "Let him know I hear him when he's talking to me when he's out pushing the stroller, and I know what he's talking to me about." And I don't share that part because it's personal, but it was very specific about what he was talking about. So I was in that, stage of sleep where you're kind of coming slowly out of it, and I look at my husband and I'm like, "Aunt Linda was just here." And my dog is barking as, like, I feel her sort of leave the room. And he jumps up and he's like, "What?" It's like she was just here. She was just here. I felt like I wanted to
Mhm.
pull her back. And as soon as I could, in the morning, I called my mom and I revealed this to my mom, and my mom started crying. And she said, I was standing at the kitchen sink last night and I was talking to Linda and I was saying, I can't believe you're not going to be there. I can't believe you're not going to be at the
Oh.
wedding. And it sort of took my breath away. And then I had the opportunity to talk to my uncle later in the day and shared the same information. And he also shared that it was all accurate. And to bring you back to the first experience I had with her, it was probably shortly after she died. But I remember very, very clearly she was on a golf course and she was all in this beautiful red and her skin was glowing. And my mom is a huge golfer. And this
Mm.
is sort of funny, but my mom, it's like her happy place. She grew up, their house was on the back of a golf course. And so at the end of the day, when most of the golfers were gone, my grandfather would take her out and he would hit
Mm.
with her. And so this was really a place for her, like golf is her therapy. It's very special to her. She really struggled after my aunt died. She had a
Mm.
lot of feelings around survivor's guilt. Did she do enough? Could she have helped more? This was her older sister, but in a lot of ways, my mom, because she was well, felt like she was the older sister. So my mom had a lot of feelings around this, and it impacted her golf game. And she really this was the one place that was super happy for her, and her game was impacted. She felt a lot of like guilt and sadness around it. And so she really was not enjoying the one thing that really brought her so much joy. And in this visit, my aunt came to me again on this golf course, and my aunt was dressed in like golf gear and her skin was just glowing. It was like
Oh.
radiant. And she said, let everybody know I'm okay. I'm healthy. I'm healed. I'm okay. But again, I didn't have the words to understand what this was at the time. So fast forward, now I'm in graduate school. I have this one where we're standing at the kitchen sink and my uncle, and I share with them, and then I go to school that day, and I have this professor who taught indigenous healing practices, but
Mm.
also taught traditional psychotherapy. And I went into her office and I said, I need to tell you about this experience, and I don't know what to make of it. And
Oh.
she said, I think you're opening up to something, and I think you should continue opening up to something. Here's the name of a medium, and here's some books. Start reading them and just see where it takes you. And I'm thinking, this is crazy, but, like, and talk about intuition, right? There was something it was only my 2nd year of graduate school. This professor was known as, like, one of the most she was so respected because she had a very, very high standard. Like, people failed her class, like, she had very high expectations, and the way that she taught was just impeccable. She continues to be one of the smartest people I've ever met in this field, and we're still in touch to this day. And she was the one who really encouraged me and believed in me and said, don't she's like, my whole life I've wanted to have these experiences and I can't. She's like, so I want you to like go forth and try to open up more. And I didn't.
Wow.
I stopped because I was in the midst of graduate school and I was like, what is she talking about? Like, okay, I'll read Sylvia Brown, which was basically the only
Mhm.
medium back. This was 25 years ago. And then my papa died, and this was, like, another 5 or 6 years later, and it happened again. And then it started happening with my patients' loved ones, and at that point was really when I thought, "Okay, there's something going on here, and I wanna understand more. I wanna know more.
Mm.
What is happening in these liminal spaces, in these spaces between? Like, what is going on? I need to more deeply understand it." And so that kind of private path was being forged while I was also a practicing therapist. But it was sort of like never the two shall meet. It felt like they needed to be kept very separate.
I'm curious you finally listened, which is so great, and what a professor to have
Oh,
that, I mean, shifted your life, literally changed your
yeah,
life,
yeah.
and changed all of our lives because you're now out doing this
Mm,
work.
yeah.
But when you are in traditional clinical psychology, and if you're gonna start talking about intuition and visitors from people who had passed away, Was there something stopping a really strong fear because it's not science? I'm talking about then. It's not
Right.
science. It's woo-woo. I'm not gonna be taken seriously. How were you able to incorporate all that?
Yeah, I think for a long time I didn't, which was why they were very separate. Like I did so after it started happening with my patients' loved ones, I was like, okay, something's going on here. I brought that number back out of that medium that my professor,
Mhm.
Kathy Goggin, for those who are listening, and I still talk to her and we actually are gonna have a call in a couple weeks. I'm like, are your ears ringing all the time? Because I literally mention you all the time. And I called the medium and we started working together. And I worked with her for 2 years. I called and so she really kind of taught me, like, how do you tune in? What does it look like? What are
Mhm.
the symbols? What are the meanings? How do you translate the language that's coming through? We did practice readings and everything, and I always joke, like, she was really sort of what you would envision a psychic would be. She has since passed, rest in peace, Dorothy. She had this, like, crazy red hair, and, like, you'd walk into her place and there were crystals everywhere
Yeah.
and plants. I mean, it was like exact and she, like, smoked, like, a pack a day, and she was, like had this hoarse, raspy voice, and she was amazing. And she taught me. Taught me some of the skills and what I needed to do and how to protect myself and how to protect my energy. And I was always in sort of this push-pull with my relationship with this, again, because of the clinical work. And so I did then I called it my medium internship. I started bringing people in for readings just for fun to practice. What started as I would just do like a month's worth turned into 3 months.
Mhm.
And while it was really powerful, it didn't have the, like, texture of a therapy session. I just
Yeah.
sort of missed the richness of therapy, and I was still doing therapy at the time. And that was really the birth of the podcast because I was like, "Okay, I have this part of myself that I can't ignore, and I don't wanna ignore it, and it feels really important that people start to think about this in terms of how they're thinking about the clinical work. Because a big piece too, that I forgot to mention earlier was that the anxiety that I had once I connected with my aunt, like, dropped
Yeah.
dramatically. So I had been struggling with this anxiety for so long. Then I have this experience with her, and there's a piece that had come over me of like, you don't need to grip the wheel of life so damn tight all the time. You can sort of let go. And I had been in therapy. I mean, I was in therapy for 17 years. So it wasn't like I wasn't on this path or I wasn't doing like I did the work. And I still couldn't, like, rid myself of that anxiety, and then I had this experience and boom, it was not overnight, but it certainly lessened. And so I was like, "Okay, where do we go from here?" And it was at the time when podcasts were just starting out, and I had sort of tested it with some people being like, "What do you think?" And I have a couple friends in the field, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know, like, be careful." And I was like, "You know what? I can't deny this part of myself any longer. I know I'm not meant to be a medium. I know that is not my path, but I can't just do traditional psychotherapy in the way that I know it anymore because
Mhm.
now I have all this new information." So I started the podcast as a way just to bring this perspective out into the world and to have really well-researched people on the podcast, people who are doing research in this space, but also people who've had personal experiences to kind of start to bridge that gap. And everything that's come from it has been completely organic in terms of what's needed in the psychotherapy space. And that to me is like the most amazing part is because people started coming to me saying, "Could you be my therapist? Because I want a therapist who can talk about these things." I was like, "Well, I can't because I'm full." But maybe there's a space, and I started having clinicians coming to me saying, "Can you consult with me on this case? I feel like there's more here that's, like, going on spiritually." And I have a client who's in grief, but they're talking about a connection with their loved one, but I'm not sure how to navigate that. And so it became it became clinicians saying to me, "We
Mhm.
need this so desperately. This feels like a piece that's missing from our work." All of these clinicians had been working really quietly and kind of siloed, but really grappling with these big questions about how do we integrate this? How do we make this so we're working ethically within kind of the boundaries of we have licenses, right? Which is different. We're regulated, whereas like a lot of the like the spiritual workers are not, right? Like mediums don't have regulations,
Mhm.
astrologers don't have regulations, tarot readers don't have regulations. But so many people are seeking these alternative forms of treatment or alternative ways of knowing themselves. Why are we ignoring that? We need to stop ignoring that, and we need to invite those things into the conversation. And that's really where now, I mean, I just had a group, we meet now every week, this group, because it's like morphed and changed. And everybody who's there is doing amazing spiritually informed work where
Mhm.
they're really looking at spirituality in the way that we're talking about it right now as another lens through which to see the client. It's beyond, I mean, it's a lot about making meaning, which is, I mean, psychology is soul. That is what psyche means, is soul. So we're really looking at the soul, but we're also, I mean, a lot of our conversation today was about, like, where are the ethics? Is there a time where we might refer someone to to have their astrological chart read? And we've met with astrologers who've come in and talked to us about that. But we're really thinking deeply about, like, when might that be an
Mhm.
appropriate referral to make? And how would we make that referral? And who do we make those referrals to? Both, like, what practitioners do we wanna refer to? Because we wanna make sure that the practitioners understand the therapeutic relationship and it doesn't become a crutch, because I think sometimes in the spiritual spaces, people are just looking for, they just want whatever modality it is to, like, heal them or give them
Mhm.
the answers, and we all, this whole community that we're building believes that, like, we hold those answers, but sometimes how those answers can be revealed to us, we might just need to shift our lens a little to be able to see them differently. And so that's really where this work has evolved to, and it's so incredible. And we're talking about our own intuition in therapy, and, like, when we have these intuitive hits, what do we do with them? How do we use them? How do we use them appropriately? How do we use them judiciously? We're not, people are not coming to us as mediums. They're not coming to us as
Mhm.
intuitive advisors. They're coming to us as their therapist, which is a different role. And yet, we as therapists might be getting intuitive information that could be useful for our clients. So how are we careful with that? And what are we doing to use that in a way that's really always, client driven, moving the client forward, not about our own, because I think in this space too, there can be a lot of ego, and it can be really exciting when you start to tap in and you get these hits and you have this information that
Yeah.
how could you have otherwise known it? And there can be a bit of, like, an ego excitement around it and a feeling of power. And I was just listening to a podcast recently about this, that, like, the work that needs to be done before you can even do this work is really checking your ego. Because when it
100%.
becomes, yeah, when it becomes about your ego, then it becomes not about the person who's sitting in front of you.
100%, and that's where this I look at spirituality as consciousness. It's just, to me, it's just consciousness, it's energy, and I think it's that ego that can trip people up, and when I started we have some similarities. I'm not a clinical psychologist, but we have some similarities with the anxiety, and I'm sure you're picking up on other people's energies and all your life and thinking they were your own and
Yep.
all of that. And I had a PR firm for 30 years in the entertainment industry, but I always had intuitive abilities, but never really talked about them. I just kinda knew. And I kept it very sequestered. I didn't
Mhm.
really wanna share it. When this came into me for this podcast, and I've said this many times on here, I was hiking and I heard guides, they said to me, "You're gonna be doing this podcast," and they told me the name, and I instantly said no. And because podcast, no, no, I don't even know how to do one.
Mhm.
And then they said it's gonna be a marriage between neuroscience and metaphysics, and I went, "Oh, that I like," because I really am a strong proponent of science. I don't think you can have it without the other element,
Mm-mm.
because the other element is what keeps, I don't know, it's that soul element,
Yeah.
and if you can g I wish I had a therapist like you. I can just say that. I wish I could
Oh,
have
thank
gone to somebody who would have picked up on that. I was intuitive, I was very anxious, but would have picked up, "Huh, do you kind of get this feeling when you walk in a room?" Do you pick up on the energy of other people? It's so powerful, Amy.
Mhm.
What you're doing, and I've said this now since I started this podcast, this is where we're going.
Yeah.
We are and you're seeing that read books by neuroscientists or researchers that they're talking about visualization, intuition, to really tap into that. Those are words nobody would ever have used before.
No.
And with your family, your mom when she was younger, you didn't use intuition. I don't think I ever heard that word. I don't,
Mm-mm.
that's so I'm just so pleased at what you're doing. And thank you. Thank you for being at the forefront of leading this. And it's going to shift people dramatically. Can I ask you? So, if somebody comes into you for, I don't know what they would come into. Let's just say they're always anxious and they can't really
Mhm.
function.
Mhm.
Do you start getting some signs or something that maybe there's something on the other side that they need to look into?
I think it's always, it's having, like, a wide breath. Like, I don't I think, the saying, like, when you what is it? When you have a hammer, or when you're a nail, everything's a hammer. When you have a hammer,
Mhm.
everything's a nail type of thing. Like, I'm about, like, just widening the breath of the lens through which you're seeing someone. So for me, when someone comes in my office, if they're anxious, I'm of course assessing them from like a traditional psychotherapeutic perspective. I come from a relational psychodynamic background. So I'm always looking at like what were your early attachments, what were your early
Mhm.
childhood relationships, how did that inform how you are today? I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not like I'm like, "Oh, well, there might not be there's nothing chemical going on." Like we want to consider that, although that's not usually my first defense. I'm always like, let's see if some therapy can help kind of down regulate your nervous system a little bit before we go the route of medication. But it really what I talk about in my course that I teach is it's really about a lens. And so it's like the lens through which you are now looking at this person is not like a human being sitting in front of you who meets, the 7 criteria for the DSM and because of that they have a diagnosis of anxiety. That tells me nothing about them except that I can check off a bunch of symptoms on a checklist. What I'm really looking at is like, what is driving this anxiety? And might some of what be driving it, maybe they had a past life and something happened in a past life. Or maybe they had, maybe like, how am I thinking about their soul contracts and what they're here to work on in this lifetime? And how this is something like I just had a client who I've seen for years, and I had some really interesting intuitive hits with her early on. And I did use it, but not in like I just had an intuitive hit. It was like, I
Mhm.
think maybe this was where things got really stuck for you. Does that ring true to you? And it had nothing to do with things that she had told me. It was like a very clear image that I had of a very specific time. And she came back and we were talking through something and she was like, "I just feel like what am I not seeing or what did I do to deserve this?" And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." Like she was like trying to go down this sense of like this is like my karma and I was like, "Hang on. Let's
Mhm.
stop for a minute here. Let's take a step back from this and let's think about perhaps what are kind of your lessons from the perspective of your soul? Because this is a repeating pattern for you and we know it. It's a repeating pattern. What is your soul here? How is this an opportunity for your soul to grow from this place based on everything we know from your this current lifetime, because we know a lot about what you need to do in terms of setting boundaries and being very firm. And she was like, "Oh, I got it. Like, my soul keeps getting these lessons of like, I need to be very clear on my boundaries. Otherwise, I will continue to get taken advantage of." And it was like this
Mhm.
teeny tiny shift. It's not like a modality like EMDR where you're like tapping or EFT where you're tapping, like
Mhm.
it's just a perspective that sort of widens the lens by which someone might be seeing themselves.
So it can be that's what it's like a tiny little tweak. And I remember, well, my parents died 4 months apart, and that was traumatic for me. I have
I'm
beautiful
so
family, but I felt somebody said, "Now you're an orphan," and I thought, "Oh,"
yeah.
and I loved my parents, they were so beautiful,
Mm,
and beautiful people, and I was lost, and I thought, I'm gonna learn how the brain works because if I learn how my brain works, maybe there's a way that I can work through this.
Mhm.
So I met a neuroscientist. I said, look, we'll trade. I'll do your PR for you if you will teach me about my brain. And that, Amy, was so huge for me because once I learned that there's neuroplasticity, I learned that I don't have to always be this way. I don't have to always be anxious. I don't have to relive these freaking stories over and over and over
Mhm.
again in my head with ruminating, which I was the queen of rumination. And once I started learning that, my anxiety completely calmed down. So that was science that was helping me there.
Right.
Then my intuition flooded in like there's no tomorrow.
Mhm.
Once you can calm that left brain thing that's going on, and
Right.
you are the therapist, the psychologist, so you know of this much better than I do. I can only tell you from my own experience. Once I calmed it down and I knew there was hope and I knew that I could shift it, because it's hope, right? If you don't have hope, forget it. Then my intuition, I was talking to loved ones all the time. I mean, it just flooded to the point where I got to where I started to really believe it.
Mhm.
And you have to trust in it. And then this podcast came in. So I know it's my guides going, hey, Sandi, it's time for you to actually talk about this.
Right.
Like your podcast.
Right.
Very, very similar.
Well, and I love the title of your podcast, Fear Unzipped, because for me, there was so much fear. Like, I think
Mhm.
that there was fear living inside of me before my aunt died that was showing up as anxiety. I think, so much of my anxiety is I think so much of I think at the core of anxiety is a fear of death, like a fear of, right? Even it shows up in all different kinds of ways, but there is the worry it's really an existential anxiety is like an existential crisis.
Mhm.
Ultimately, if you keep digging and digging and digging, that's what's at the core is like, am I gonna die? And the answer is yes, you are. And so the question is then, how do I deal with this incredible life that I have before me? How do I live the most fully possible? And for me, the fear, both my anxiety, but also the fear of stepping into this space and the fear of really stepping forward and using this voice that felt I felt like that could be an existential crisis. Like my whole practice could have blown up. It could have dried up. It could have gone away once I started talking about this. I have physicians who are at Northwestern who refer to me. If they decided like this woman's a kook, you know, I would have been screwed. But I also felt like I had to be true to myself.
When I started this podcast, I said I'd only support products I really love, and here is one of them. I used to travel with a bag full of supplements, never knowing if any of it was actually working. Then I found IM8 Daily Ultimate Essentials Pro, 90 nutrients in one drink, replacing up to 16 supplements backed by clinical research. My focus and energy changed. My sleep got better. I dropped most of my old supplements and never looked back. If you're tired of guessing which supplement actually works, try IM8 Daily Ultimate Essentials Pro. Use code im8health.com/unzip10 for 10% off your first order. I think you'll be really glad you did. I so admire that, Amy, especially when you've put so many years into schooling, to
Yeah, it's a lot of
learn
years.
a lot of years to learn what you did, and then all of a sudden throw it on its side, just flip it around. It takes a lot of courage to do that. You were very likely, you were guided to do that because
Yeah.
you are so better off to the world right now teaching what you're teaching in your therapeutic sessions than you would have been back then. I did have some like talk therapy sessions through my life,
Uh-huh.
and I found them to be like we talk about what happened yesterday.
Right.
And then so every time I came in, we never got to the big chunk of it all. It was more about what happened the day before. So it was moving slowly. If I had had somebody who could really have me tap into what does your gut tell you about that?
Mhm.
I could have maneuvered through things so much faster.
I think that there's so many ways too to meet this is one of the things we talk about in the group is like where are we meeting clients? Like there's so many words that people use that are in this space that they don't even realize. Like you said, your gut, right? Like we can meet
Mhm.
people where they are in their journey and bring them along, even though we're not saying like this is what you're doing is spiritual. But people use words all the time like I feel like I'm at work and I just feel like my soul is dying,
Mhm.
right? Like, what are you actually talking about there? You're not talking about like you might be showing up as looking depressed, but then you're talking about your soul being dead, feeling dead inside. What's feeling dead inside? There's a sense of not being aligned, of your and people will say like I go to work and I feel like the energy is sucked out of me. What does that actually mean? You're using the words. So then as therapists, we can use those words to help bring people along on this journey is like, well, you're talking about the energy. Your energy feels like it's dying or your energy feels depleted. What do you mean by that? What kind of energy are you talking about? And then
Mhm.
they don't I mean, this is one of the things we talk about in this group or in this course is like energy psychology. Energy psychology is a new emerging form of psychology. And it is thinking about how the energy in our body moves, how we can move energy through tapping is a great practice, like moving these, tapping along these meridian lines that line up with acupuncture and acupressure to help move the energy stuck in our body. We are energetic beings. And so we have to think about, okay, where is energy stuck for us? Why am I feeling stuck here? What's stuck energetically? What might help move that along? And if just seeing the people in front of us as like a straight diagnosis and here's the criteria and here's how we treat it, we're missing so much of the human spirit. Again, there's that word, right? We use these words all the time. And then when it comes to thinking about our clients in that way in a clinical setting, we stop. We stop thinking about their soul. We stop thinking about the spirit. We stop thinking about the energy. I mean, I know how I feel when certain people walk in a room. I know how I feel when I have conversations with certain people, right? You get a sense of how some like for people who can't see and are just listening, like I'm rubbing my fingers together, you get a sense of people based
Mhm.
on how you feel when you're with them. You can get a sense of where their energy is. Are they high energy? Are they low energy? Are they peaceful? Are they excitable? All of that is energy.
I love it, the greatest compliment I always say that somebody can give me is, "I love your energy," or, "You have beautiful energy."
Yeah.
Oh my god, because that means you're calming around them, and I pick all my life, I picked up on energy, but felt it was mine.
Right.
So and that's what a great way that you can work with your patients that you can say, "Okay, so in that relationship, why does your throat feel so constricted when you're trying
Right.
to say something?" And it's so great because it steps away from you're messing up or there's something wrong with you, and it takes you outside so you can look at it as an observer. And that's
Mhm.
what I often suggest is when you're talking to yourself, talk to yourself like you're outside, you're a third person, and I'm your friend. Would you say that to yourself? Yeah, I this is such important work that you're doing. What would you suggest to your patients about how do I know that this is my intuition or this is just my anxiety popping up? How do I read the differences?
For me, intuition comes in very quickly and it is a felt sense of knowing. The minute emotion gets involved, you're done. Like the minute there is emotion connected to that, it is no longer intuition. It's just your emotion has taken over. So, and you have to be aware of those subtle shifts in order to notice them. So, I think that when you have practices like a meditation practice or even a morning practice where you wake up and you do a scan and you're like, okay, where am I today? Like, how am I waking up as I'm starting this day? What am I feeling? And just having that awareness, then you can start to differentiate again, what's yours and what's mine and what's my anxiety versus what's my intuition. Intuition doesn't have emotion attached to it. It's
Mhm.
just a knowing.
That's exactly what I say. It kinda whispers in, and if you don't kinda catch it, it's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
It'll disappear.
Mhm.
The fear or anxiety is going to judge. It's going to have an emotion. You're gonna get a constricted feeling inside of you, and that's never intuition. It
And if you're, like, perseverating on it, that's not intuition.
Exactly, which we humans are really good. We're really
Mhm.
good at doing that. Can you give some examples from your practice just of people that you've seen where you've seen some miraculous changes because of bringing this element into it?
I mean, it's sort of hard at this point to even, like, it's because it's not
Yes.
like it's one moment, right? It's an embodiment of how I show up with my clients, and so I mean, every single one of their for the most part, I mean, many of my clients now went from, like, very unhealthy relationships to extremely healthy relationships, better at setting boundaries, what I always say is, like, their foundation, like, they came into me with, like, very unstable foundations, and we sort of reset their foundations, and so I'm looking at, like, okay, when you're living your life holistically, like, are all the areas of your life feel like for the most part, obviously, we all have hardships and things that happen. I mean, I'm not saying that all my clients are, like, living these kumbaya lives. Life is still life, and life is still
Yeah.
hard. But it's, like, their ability to sort of step back, like you were saying, and see the obstacles in front of them, not as obstacles, but as, like, stepping stones, or the ability to see themselves as a soul here and how they're progressing. I mean, even some of the language that they now use and that they've incorporated into their
Mhm,
lives has shifted. And again, this isn't for everybody. Like,
mhm,
uh, how I see it might be for everyone, like, how I'm conceptualizing and thinking about it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the language I'm using with them. So I meet people where they are, and I translate to them what I think they'll be able to digest. I see a lot of people that are, very high up in the financial world, and in legal, and and physicians, and so, like, I'm not talking to a physician about past lives in
mhm.
that way. Some might be open to it, but and I'll test it out, and many of them at this point know. They know who they've got sitting with them. So, but if they're like, absolutely not, like, I don't buy that. I'm not pushing my agenda
Mhm,
on them. I mean, I love this story. I have a client who, and I have permission to share all of these. So, and it got really hard for me. They know who they are, but it got really hard for me to, like, jumble them up because I would
mhm.
confuse myself in trying to disguise them. So I was just like, "Can I have your permission to share this story?" So I have a client who's very much not into anything having to do with the afterlife. The soul goes on, like, very practical. When you die, you die. That's it. Buried, dead
Mhm,
in the ground. Like, move on. I have to deal with the grief and everything that was left behind. Again, this is someone who knows about my work, knows I have a podcast, has never listened to it, really has no interest, but knows that I have, like, a little, like, I like to talk about signs and synchronicities. And every once in a while, I'll sort of be like, sure about that? Like, I'll sort of, invite. So he was moving his child into college, and it was his wedding anniversary on the day he was moving his child into college. And his wife had passed, and he was moving her in,
mhm,
and they had gone out to him and his child had gone out to breakfast together. They came back from breakfast, they were entering the hotel, and as they entered the hotel, his daughter kinda looked at him and she was like, "Did you hear this song?" And he paused for a minute, and he said, "I got goosebumps all over. Tears started welling up in my eyes. It was our first dance."
mhm,
And, I said, "And how did you feel in that moment?" And he said, "I felt like she was there with us. Like, I felt like it really it took my breath away." And, you know, did I need to be like, "See, she's there, she," I didn't, because that's not where he needed to go.
mhm,
But his ability to welcome that as part of for me to welcome that as part of the conversation, and for him to feel like this was a really profound experience that he had in that moment, and he felt her presence.
mhm.
And it was, maybe the first time. He hasn't said anything since, and I think it really struck him. And so just being able to share that, to have the awareness to think, and I don't know that he would have had that awareness if we weren't working together, right? Like to say, "Oh my gosh, that this might be more than just a coincidence." But knowing who he had been working with for so many years allowed him to be open to that
Mhm.
as a potential possibility.
Yes, I think the fact that he was working with you, there's a little bit of an open, cynic, a skeptic. I think it's super
Mhm.
important to be skeptical
Absolutely.
in this realm of spirituality, mediums, tarot readers. You have to be really careful
And discern.
and
It's discernment.
discernment is that number one word that I always say, because it can, we you have a huge responsibility, I have a huge responsibility with this podcast, that I don't lead people astray and that I don't create more fear in their lives, and or bring people forward that, are not, of the highest integrity, let's put it that
Mhm.
way. I'm very, very cognizant of it, and I also authenticity is just, oh man, is so important to me, and that whole ego thing, I that's one thing I said when I was told about this podcast. The ego, I'm not the central character here.
Right.
It's so cool because I get to meet people like you. Oh my gosh, how lucky am I? And have these rich conversations, and then we all heal together.
Yeah.
And that's really important, and if somebody tells you you have to do it this way because it's the only way you're gonna reach your loved ones, I'd say run so far in the other direction, because there is no one way of anything, and
Mm-mm.
it's what feels true to yourself. And that man, for the rest of his days, he has that memory,
Right.
and I'm sure has brought him enormous comfort. Just possibility, and again, hope.
Mhm.
Especially when you lose a child,
Oh,
you
oh, yeah, he did not lose a child.
no, 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 I know
Oh,
that.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
know, oh, no, no, I
Yes,
know he
when
didn't
you
lose a child, but
yeah.
I'm saying especially those who
Oh,
have
yeah.
lost children, oh, boy, those signs are a lifeline, and
Well,
I've
and
go
yeah,
ahead.
and I think, it doesn't erase the grief. Like, nothing will erase the grief of losing someone you love.
Mhm,
There's no way around that. I wish it did. And even if you have an ongoing connection, which I have had with my aunt,
mhm.
you know, she still pops in periodically. It's still not having her here.
Yeah,
And I think of that all the time. I mean, I have 3 beautiful children, and I can't there's no amount of belief that I have that would ever heal my heart. If
mhm.
it would help heal it, but it would be broken forever if something happened to them. Um,
Oh, yeah, I can't
so
even
and I think that
imagine.
that's actually really important for people to hear, and this is one of the things I talk about pretty frequently as well, is spiritual bypassing and the danger in spiritual bypassing in this space, which I think a lot of people can have a tendency to do. So spiritual bypassing is using spiritual practices to not actually feel the emotional experience of what you're going through. So people who maybe, lose a loved one in grief and then or lose a loved one and then just seek mediumship as a way of connecting, and they never really deal with the grief and the loss of what they had. And so these spiritual practices become ways of avoiding the intensity of feelings, because feelings aren't always pretty and they don't feel good all the time. And so that's really hard. It's hard to be in your feelings. And yet it's the only way through, is to be in your feelings. And I really encourage the clinicians that I'm training to make sure that we're aware of, like, when people, like, sometimes some of my clients will say, I know that this is happening to me because this is part of my soul contract and this is
Mm,
my, life's this is what's supposed to happen. Okay. And how are you feeling about it? Because just because you know and trust that this is part of your soul contract doesn't mean you're happy about it. Doesn't mean there isn't room to grow and learn from it. You have to do those pieces. That is why you're here. Part of your
mhm.
soul contract was to be here to experience the human emotions of what your soul is here to do and grow from. So you gotta experience it, otherwise, probably gonna get it again.
Do you think that's just an excuse to say that it's part of I know it's part of my soul contract, so that's why this is the way it is?
I think
D
it's a way to bypass.
Yeah, so spiritual bypassing.
Yeah. I think it's a way
Mhm.
to really, like, to rationalize, which is a psychological defense, away the difficulty of feeling what you're feeling.
It's something that I am so adamant about that if you're grieving, grieve. There's no right time, there's no 6 months, there's no 3 months, there's no 1 year. Whatever is your grieving process, do it. And if it means falling apart for a week and then maybe getting up and going out and having a cup of coffee and I it's just it's so important that people do it the way that works for them with saying that there's a move forward, that it's not it's debilitating them for the rest of their lives. And I do really believe that these things happen not to hurt us, but it's part of our teachers, part of our learning process,
Right.
which, you wanna just use expletives and say, "Well, screw that." I don't need to learn that lesson. I want that
Right.
person here.
Right.
But it did happen, so what are we going to learn from that?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, each we know post-traumatic growth, right? We know these concepts that we have to look at these experiences and say, as painful as some of them
Mhm.
are, how can I continue to grow from them? And that does not mean that there isn't a period of time, which might be a long period of time, where you are brought to your knees and you need people around you who can literally lift you up every day to put one foot in front of the other and, step out the door in the morning. Like, both of these things can exist
Mhm.
simultaneously. And that's where I think, again, like, where the magic happens in this work is when you do integrate the spiritual and the psychological. And you're talking about, like, okay, maybe I need to go on medication for a period of time because I just cannot get out of bed in the morning because of this grief. And I would love to talk to a medium
Mhm.
and I wanna connect with my loved one. That to me is a beautiful space for therapists to be able to say to people
Mhm.
like, "Let's see, let's here's a reputable medium who does great readings. Let's see how it feels, and let's bring it back here and let's talk about it after. How did you feel when you heard X, Y, and Z, the medium say X, Y, and Z? Did you feel connected to your loved one? Have you felt more connected to them? And, like, you got a shower this morning. You gotta get out of bed."
Mhm. So I really believe bringing those 2 worlds together is where it's at. I mean, they say that we're spirits in a human body. I do believe that. Why then in therapy would you completely ignore that part? But that's because of, I think materialism in science, that cause and effect. You have to have pure evidence. When you're in the room with somebody that maybe has lost someone, have you had experiences where they come in and can you share a
Yeah.
little bit about
Yes.
that?
Yes, I have. Again, I'm very judicious because they're not
Mhm.
coming to me to do a reading.
Oh.
They're coming to me as a therapist. And so I have really long-standing I do deep work with people. I have long-standing relationships where I've seen people
Mm,
for years. So I'm comfortable enough that if I did get an intuitive download or information of a loved one coming through, I would say, I think I have some information coming through from whomever, your father or your sister.
mhm.
Um, would you be comfortable with me sharing it? So I would never share information without asking permission
Yes.
first.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of times where I I really felt like if I couldn't work, like it was almost like my brain was hijacked. No, I'm
Mhm.
very left-brained. And so for me, when I talk about, like, this work and I talk about people are like, "Well, why wouldn't you be a medium?" Like, it is a real practice for me to shift into my right brain and move my left brain out of the way. And so it's not like I can just, like, move back and forth between them, and I haven't practiced. I'm pretty out of practice. One of my goals for the summer is to practice more, but because I'm out of practice, it's not super easy for me to shift. And because it's not super easy for me to shift, when the information comes in, it
Mhm.
can be so loud and aggressive, not in like a mean way, but just like I then cannot use my left brain. So I almost have no choice but to, I mean, again, I ask permission, but then the information just kind of comes flowing in. But this doesn't happen.
Mhm.
It's rare that it just happens that spontaneously, but I have shared in the past when that has happened, and people are always really open to it. Of course, they feel it does shift the energy of the session because then
Mhm.
it just is information giving from me where the session, my therapy sessions are mostly my clients talking,
Right.
and this is really me just giving information.
I find it so fascinating because I've interviewed, many people and their loved ones come in while we're talking, and I
Mm,
don't say anything. But in one instance, it was so beautiful. Oh, Kimberly Warner, I just love her so much. I interviewed or had a conversation with both her she had a biological father and a father who raised her,
mm,
and she didn't know her biological father, but I saw them both come in and kiss her on either side of her head, and I'm
oh,
talking to her, and I can share this because we have talked about it, so it's okay for me to share it, and she felt it too, but we talked about it after I stopped recording. And I just said, "Did you feel something?" Because 'Cause I'm not going to just say, "This
right.
person came in," and, like, who am I? I'm not a I don't practice as a medium, I don't but sometimes they just come in or a child has come in to me before I interviewed their mom the day before with information for the mom. It's beautiful, and
Mhm.
I'm so honored that these spirits are willing to communicate with me. You know,
Yeah,
that's an honor to have
it
that.
is. Yeah. And that's also like I hold such reverence for that work. I think it's such important work. And I think that again, when people are holding that work and they're working in a space where people they've lost someone they loved and all they want to do is connect with them, it's
Mhm.
so important that there's reverence for that.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Is there something else that you'd like to share with people, just to help them kind of navigate the craziness right now in particular? Because I'm feeling the energies of the collective. Many people are feeling it. We feel a bit unsettled this morning. I was doing, doing my tapping.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's which really helps me a lot, just
Mhm.
calms me down. Is there something that you would suggest?
I think obviously the times right now feel very unsettled. And I think that there can be sort of this collective feeling of people saying, "Oh, this energy is so much, and I'm feeling this
Mm,
energy, and it's so intense." And that's not actually really helpful. What's really helpful is to stabilize your own energy so you don't get pulled into this collective chaos. Because I love this saying, I think it was like, I don't know, maybe the Dalai Lama or who said, like, you can't be in service to others if you're in a place where you are so unstable and you're getting
yeah.
caught in the chaos of it all. That's not to say you don't pay attention to it at all, but how you get pulled into it and then feeling so energetically off base. And I think a lot of people like to say like they feel the energy and it's so
Mhm.
intense and I can't escape it and what am I supposed to do? And that's just feeding into that energy. You have to be able to step out of it and whatever way for you works. I mean, pick your tool. Like there are so many out there now. Like for you, you said it was tapping. For me, it's breath and sound.
Mhm.
It's being in nature. It's putting my feet in the grass. Like it used to be therapy, but I've moved away from that to more of this kind of these somatic techniques for me personally. But I love to process too. I love to talk through
Yeah.
things. But whatever that tool is, like you wouldn't if you saw a tornado coming, like step into the path of a tornado. And so it's like, how can I witness what's happening, but not get so energetically pulled into it that it is harming me because then I really can't help anybody else.
That is excellent advice. In fact, I was having a conversation the other day with a friend, and I was saying, "Wow, are you picking up on this?" Because she's an intuitive. And then I said, "You know what? I'm just feeding into that. I'm just feeding into the angst that's out there. So I need to raise my frequency, raise my
Mm.
vibration, and find the exquisiteness in what's around me." And
Right.
mine is nature, my
Yeah.
trees, animals. I'm on a grounding mat right now. My feet are on a grounding mat.
Mm.
I just that shifts me. So it's very somatic.
Mhm.
But that is excellent advice. And I think a lot of us are so used to saying, "Oh my God, it's just so awful out there."
Right.
And all we're doing is contributing to that anxious energy.
Yeah, that chaotic, anxious, right? You are now another little, I don't know if electron's the
Cog,
right
like
word.
just another, yeah.
Right, you're like another energetic being in this, like,
Mhm.
whirling dervish of, like, yuck, and I don't I want when people come into, like, my energetic space, whatever that is, if it's my home, my office, my
Mhm.
physical body, because we're just interacting, I want them to be like, "Oh, that was such a great I feel so much better having talked to you," or, "I feel calmer," or, "Thanks so much, that was really helpful." Not like, "Oh god." Again, going back to these words that we use to describe how we feel when we're with someone, right? We like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that person depletes me. All they do is complain." It's like, "Okay, yeah, the there's a lot going on in the world right now that sucks, sucks, sucks. It's
Mhm.
terrible." And what is one step that you are taking? What is one inspired action you are taking to change that? Because that's a much different place to be than, "Oh, this world is so terrible right now." It's like, yeah, the world is
Mhm.
bad, but the world has maybe always been bad. Maybe we
Mhm.
just didn't know how bad it was because we didn't have these things to tell us
Exactly.
every 5 minutes. I mean, I have not had a chance to come up for air today. I have no idea what's happening in the world. None today.
Yeah.
0. I started my morning, I got my kid off to camp, I came home, I've been on calls all day. I feel great,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing things that are filling me up. Not like turning a blind eye, but, like, we used to get the paper in the morning and we'd read what was happening for the day. I'm dating myself. I'm not, like, 100 years old, but,
I am.
and
I'm 100, you're
no,
not.
you're
Yes,
not.
I am.
You look amazing if you are. But then we, like, went off on our day, right?
Yeah.
We weren't inundated with so much information every second because our nervous systems are not meant to
Mhm.
handle all that information coming at us all the time. And yet we feel like, "Well, now I have to consume it." Well, what are you doing at a local level, right? What are you doing
Mhm.
on the ground floor to impact change? Whatever that is, I don't care. Like, I've served on my kids' school boards for 15 plus years. I'm just retiring. Like, that was for me a big way for me to give back and impact something. I live in Chicago. Schools are a disaster here.
Mm.
Um, but it's like I could complain that the schools are a disaster or I could do something about the disaster. And it's at a local level where I feel like a difference was made. Not like I donated money to some charity, which again is powerful if that's what you want to do, but that didn't feel for me like it was like I was shifting the needle in any way. But this has felt like I've shifted the needle. And so it feels really good to be in that place versus just complaining about how bad things are.
Such words of wisdom, and I'm taking those to heart because you're my teacher today for that. To be a reminder, I did say it the other day, but it is a reminder that what is the one thing, maybe one little thing I can do that can shift, because if I shift my energy, it is going to have an impact on others around me, maybe
Right.
15 people around me. If I smile at somebody, if I it this is powerful stuff. We are very powerful beings,
Yep.
and we can bring so much good into people's lives, or we could really torture them. So,
Yeah. And I'm always thinking about like, how can I alchemize this situation, even
mm,
if it's bad, right? Like, even if someone is, some guy snapped at me at the grocery store the other day, and I was like, that didn't feel good. Like, I don't know. I didn't do it. all I did was park in a parking spot. Like, I didn't touch you, and like, in that moment, that energy feels really yucky, right? Like, we know that feeling, and I'm like, "All right, again, this is a perfect example, like, this is about him and not me. This is about him feeling like he needed to have power over me in some way. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do in this moment? What's one inspired action I can take to either try to alchemize the situation?" And I did, and it didn't work. And so I was like, I went inside and I said, "Hey," he like yelled at me because he said, "That's not a parking spot." And I was like, mm, okay, first of all, you're not the parking police. And second, like my immediate response was like really
Mhm.
defensive, right? Like,
Mhm.
who do you think you are telling me what to do? And I am a rule follower, so I do not like to not follow rules. So I went inside and I saw him and I said, "Hey, I just like I wanted to let you know, I always park in this spot. Other people park in this spot. I've talked to them here. They said it's a spot." So, and he's like, "Well, have a nice day, lady." And I was like, "Okay." Like I tried to like smooth it over a little bit. I tried to be friendly and just say like I wasn't like, "Don't yell." Like there's so many
Mhm.
other ways, right? Like that conversation could potentially go. I also could have just left it alone. Like that could
Mhm.
have been another way. But it's a small store and we would have kept like kind of bumping into each other
Mhm.
and it just felt uncomfortable for me. But like there are tiny moments throughout every single day that we can try to shift the energy. And I'm always like, "Let me play this game and let me see what I can do."
Yes, I
Like, let
do
me
that.
Yeah, and it's so
Mhm.
fun when you're successful at it, like, you just walk up to, like, the person, who's checking you out at the grocery store, and you're like, "I could feel they've had, like, a shitty day," like, you
Mhm.
just know. I hope I can say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
And then you're like, "Let me see if I can just, like, shift the energy here and try to turn it around."
Oh, I do that. I play that game a lot, and if somebody's just not being nice, I go, "Okay, Sandy, here is your test. Send them love from your
Yes.
heart." And it
Yes.
could be bull. It could just be maybe this isn't doing a thing. I have had proof of this working on several occasions, so I just go, "Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that." We are wrapping up here.
Wow.
I'm
Oh
looking at
my
the
god.
time. I
Look at
know.
that. That
I know,
flew.
and I know you've got it's because it's a time warp in here.
Yeah.
It's you know that from doing your own
Yeah.
podcast. I have a few questions that I ask everybody. Can I ask you these
Of
questions?
course, of
Okay, okay.
course. Speed round.
When speed round. Yeah, when fear starts creeping in, what is your go-to strategy to release it?
Sometimes it's just recognizing that it's there and knowing that it will pass. Like, it's that
Mm,
simple. It's like, "Oh, there you are. Welcome. What are you so afraid of now?" And just, like, sometimes it's literally just inviting it in and
mhm.
not trying to get rid of it, but just welcoming it.
It's awareness. They say awareness
Mhm.
is a precursor to change. What's one of the best pieces of advice that you've received in life personally or professionally?
I think certainly from my professor, which was like, "Open
Mm,
up to this and follow this path." Uh,
life-changing.
yeah, literally life-changing. And for her believing in me, I think.
That's the other thing. When people believe in you, because I have people that believe in me, and it's the best medicine ever.
Mhm.
It's so nourishing. It's
Yeah.
so nourishing. What does a successful life look like to you?
Oh gosh. It's funny, I just had my birthday,
Happy
and
birthday.
thank you, and I think that what I did on my birthday to me is, like, emblematic of a successful life. Like, I did some of the things that I wanted to do. I played pickleball, which is something that I love. It's social. I walked with my family in
Mm,
nature in my favorite place. I was able to go down to the beach and watch the sunset and have dinner with the people I love,
mm,
and I felt so loved and it wasn't fancy, like, there were no parties. My husband was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "Honestly, nothing. I
mm,
really don't." Like, I can go and, I'm blessed enough that if there's something that I'm, like, really wanting, we will figure out a way for me to but there's nothing that I want. Like,
mhm,
that's the other thing. Like, I have so much of what I want. I have 3 beautiful, healthy, amazing children that I adore to pieces. Like, I just cannot get enough of them. I have a wonderful, loving husband. I have beautiful relationships with friends and family, and that to me is a successful life. It's like, what is it gonna I guess, like, fast forward to, like, what is it gonna look like when I'm laying there, hopefully, God willing, in my 90s, and what am I surrounded by? Am I surrounded by, like, no one, or am I surrounded by, like, a million people who I
Mhm.
loved and who loved me? So,
Yeah.
I think a successful life is to give love and receive love. That was a really long-winded answer.
No, I say we're here to love and be loved, and that is a successful life to me, the way you
Mhm.
described it. Last one, complete the sentence, "In the past I was, and now I am."
Okay, I'm just gonna say what first came to my
Mhm.
mind. In the past, I was anxious, and now I am free.
Yes, and I would say that about myself as well.
Hmm. I have a soul
Aim
sister on this
you
journey, huh?
you do. I was listening to your stories somewhere else, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, we have so many similarities in certain ways." Amy, thank you so much for being here. I know it's incredibly helpful to people.
Thank
And
you,
where
Sandy.
can people find you?
I am at dramyrobbins.com. That's my website. It's being redone, so hopefully it will look clearer and fresher in terms of what is happening with me. Dr. Amy Robbins on Instagram, DRAMYROBBINS. On Instagram, that is the best social media platform to find me on.
Okay.
And then my podcast, Life, Death, and the Space Between, anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to watch it, it's on YouTube. I think those are the main
Okay.
places.
And we're putting all that in the show notes. And again, this is when I tell listeners and viewers, if you like the podcast, if you like my podcast, if you like Amy's podcast, please subscribe. Please give it 5 stars. Write a little testimonial if you want, but it does make a difference for us, for both of us. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Amy.
Thank
And
you,
until we
Sandy.
meet again, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Mwah.
Likewise. Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
You
So
too.
nice. Thank you for being part of our community at Fear Unzipped. I hope this episode gave you something to carry with you, a new perspective, a moment of comfort, or a reminder to trust yourself a little more. Take what feels true, leave what doesn't, and remember, you are not alone in this. Please subscribe and share this with someone who needs it. To ask a question, go to fearunzipped.com and follow us on socials at Fear Unzipped. I'm a big fan of the team at Fear Unzipped. The show is produced by Podify. Designer and creative consultant is Kelly Griffin. The incomparable Katie Samwell composed and performed the high-frequency music. Until next time, stay curious and let's continue to awaken our inner wisdom. And now to the biz stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Fear Unzipped, its subsidiaries, or any entities they represent. This podcast is not intended as a substitute for a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.